Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I got a really special paddle review. I was able to get my hands on a Proton Project Peacock. This is their latest paddle that I believe is getting released at the beginning of December. But yeah, I was able to get my hands on one. And so I've been playing it the last couple days, probably put around 10 hours on the paddle. I wanted to jump on and talk about the paddle a bit. Haven't seen very many reviews online, so figured I'd jump on and kind of give you guys my thoughts on the paddle. All right, so really quickly, just to compare the shape to other paddles, I have a Perseus here. So her Perseus is a little bit longer, like maybe a 1/8 of an inch. As far as the handle goes, and then you can see here the paddle face is definitely longer on the Peacock. So that's, like I was mentioning, probably closer to the magnet shape. Comparing it to the Agassi, again is like an 1/8 inch longer on the handle, but as far as the paddle face goes, the Agassi is weirdly shaped, so you got a little bit of the paddle face sticking out here and here. So overall, again, the Peacock has the biggest paddle face. And then obviously it's identical to the Flamingo, so yeah, no difference there. And then just for the hell of it, I'll compare it to the hybrid Loco. So you got kind of a more round or more flat top, and then obviously a bigger paddle face as well. But the Loco is like a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 inch wider on each side. So that's the shape comparison. Now, because there isn't very many reviews online, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the specs. I typically just like to talk about how paddles play, since there's other YouTubers out there that do a much better job about talking about the different specs, the weights. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and share some of the specs here on the screen. So for overall length, we have 16.5 inches. Overall width, 7.5 inches. Thickness, we have 15 millimeter, so that's very similar to their Project Flamingo. The average weight is 8 ounces, which is pretty standard for most paddles. Typically, if you have something, in the 8.2, 8.4, that's a pretty heavy paddle. 8 is about the average, and then below that is, it's usually a lighter paddle. Grip circumference is 4.25 inches, which is also pretty standard. Handle length is 5.375, so definitely on the shorter side. So if you like hitting two-handed backhands, that might be an issue. I would compare the shape to a Magnus shape by JOOLA. Yeah, so you got that like bigger paddle face and shorter handle. The core is a proprietary high-density atomic foam core, is what they're calling it. So just another Gen 4 paddle. And then the surface is roughness enhanced raw carbon fiber. So yeah, just picking up this paddle for the first time, I noticed that it did have, pretty good grit on the surface. However, I would say that the Project Flamingo is definitely rougher and probably provides a little more spin. I don't know, just comparing it, like this feels a little bit smoother, but it does feel more rough than the JOOLA. I always think JOOLAs feel really smooth, whereas this, is a bit rougher. And then lastly, to compare to the Loco, they feel very similar now, but when the Loco was brand new, the grit was super gritty. So just something to note. All right, so next I want to talk about the power and where it stands compared to some of the more popular paddles right now. For these comparisons, I figured it might be easier to put together a visual that I can like reuse in all the different videos that I make. So I'm going to try to like have somewhat of a scale for going from least to most for each category. Obviously these are very subjective, and it's just kind of my interpretation of like the power of each of these paddles. I've played with all these paddles, so I have a good feel for how they line up as far as the different categories go. So yeah, for here we have the power scale here. On one end we have the boomstick, which to me has been the most powerful paddle I've played with. And then on the opposite end, I try to think of like what's kind of the opposite. And for me, that's something like a Lux. That has a 20mm core, at least the original one does. And that one just feels like a pillow. So I think those are two good comparisons from least to most. I will say that the scale is just relative to each of the paddles. It's not, the Vapor, that's right next to the Lux doesn't necessarily mean it's, close to the Lux as far as power, because the Vapor has much more power than the Lux. They're just kind of in comparison to each other. This is kind of how they line up. So yeah, as far as the Peacock, I think it lands somewhere between something like the Lux and the Loco. So yeah, it's a good amount of power. I really like kind of where the amount of power it provides. It gives you more power than like the Gen 3 paddles, but not too much more. It's still very controllable. So for pop, it lands right around the same place on the scale. Has a good amount of pop, but not a uncontrollable amount. That's what I found with the boomstick was kind of tough, is that it had so much pop that like volleys would a lot of times fly out of bounds, especially when they put a lot of pace on you. So like you get a big drive coming at you. I found it really hard to soften the ball because of how much pop the paddle has. That isn't necessarily an issue with the Project Peacock. I found that it had a good level of pop, but still a controllable amount. So all right, now let's get into control. So control kind of goes hand in hand with dwell time. And so you can see here the scale kind of flips. And we still have the Lux at most control. This is largely due to the dwell time that it has the most dwell time. It's a 20mm core. And on the opposite side, I think we have the boomstick. I just find that paddle to be pretty uncontrollable, for me at least. And I mean, I've seen it on the court too. Other people that have the boomstick, a lot of times are just bombing things out, unless they put really good topspin on it. So as a kind of, advanced beginner, I would say I'm somewhere in like the 3.5 range. That paddle just has uncontrollable power for me. So yeah, as far as like Gen 4 paddles go, I feel like this one so far has been the most controllable. I haven't had a chance to try the J2NF, which I heard is also really controllable. I think this paddle is probably very comparable. I'm gonna try to get a J2NF soon so I can confirm that. So yeah, I would say that the Project Peacock lands on the more controllable side of the Loco, and just a touch under some of the Gen 3 paddles that have, you know, that hollower feeling and like more dwell time. All right, so as part of the review, I wanted to do some on-court testing. So I'm gonna cut to some clips here where I, do some serves to kind of get a feel for the power, the pop, and the feel off the face of these paddles. I got the Proton Flamingo, I got the Agassi, the Loco hybrid, and the Peacock. So here we go. All right, gonna hit 2 serves with the Peacock and then switch to the Loco. Had good spin, doesn't feel too poppy or too powerful off the face. All right, and here goes the Loco. The Loco is definitely feels more crisp, more connected. It has a little bit more pop off the face, and you feel that. Whereas the Peacock feels more on like the control side. It feels more muted, and you can even hear it in the sound. Hopefully it comes through in the video, but the Loco kind of has that Gen 4 like boomstick type sound, whereas the Peacock sounds more like, I don't know, almost like a Gen 2 paddle even, just kind of muted. So now I'm gonna hit a couple serves with the Agassi. I still think this one feels more muted. There's a little bit less dwell. It sounds less thunky. That's probably because this one's a Gen 3, but yeah, I feel like the Agassi itself feels more like a classic Gen 3. It feels like it has a hollow thunk to it and a good amount of dwell time. As far as power goes, I think they're very similar. I think maybe this one still has more power. Yeah, I think that they're very close, but this one edges it out. 2 different feels for sure. Like that is one thing with Gen 4 and Gen 3. Gen 3 has that classic hollow thunk feeling, and the Gen 4 is more connected, more, I don't want to say crisp because it feels muted, but more of that like direct contact, whereas this feels kind of like a hollow thunk when you hit it. All right, quick comparison between the Flamingo and the Peacock. Like I've mentioned, like this one feels very muted. The Flamingo definitely feels, it has a little more dwell time than the Peacock. It feels more connected still, that hollow thunk. The Peacock edges it out in power still. All right, one more test for power. This test probably isn't perfect, but just want to see what might happen if I just do a big swing, not worrying about keeping it in, and just see how far across the courts the balls go. So yeah, let's just see. I'm gonna really try to hammer a ball. I'm still gonna do underhand like a serve, but I'm gonna see how far I can get it. I know there's a lot of factors, a lot of variables that can change how far the ball goes, but I feel like I'll still have a good sense of like which one felt like it really rocketed off the face. So yeah, let's start. Proton. Made it over the tennis net, just at like the baseline of the next court. Next we got the Agassi. Right about the same. probably within a foot of each other. Proton Peacock. This one made it into the transition zone of the next court over. So a little more power here. And the last one, the Loco. Here we go. That one closer to the kitchen of the next court, so most power right here. This one did curve a little more. I think I just put extra spin, hit it a little different, but it felt more powerful off the face. So yeah, I'm convinced I have the right order of power here. Goes Loco, Peacock, and these two are very close. So yeah, overall I think this Project Peacock is a really great paddle. The price point is a little steep. You know, it comes in at $280, whereas the Loco comes in at like $190. But you know, if you're someone that has tried all these new Gen 4 power paddles and is finding them to be too powerful and too poppy, just really hard to control, this one is definitely a contender then, and one you should consider. The Loco has that fiberglass layer, so it could still be very poppy for some people. And yeah, I think this paddle is probably very similar to the J2NF. I need to get one for myself. Just from what I've heard though, like the J2NF is supposed to be even more of a toned down version of the Loco, which is what I think about this paddle. I think this paddle is, you know, similar to the Loco, but just everything's just toned down, you know, less pop, little less power, more dwell time, more muted. So yeah, overall I think this feels like a more toned down version of the Loco. So if that's something you're looking for, this would be a great option. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been trying to grow the channel, so that helps out a lot.